Welcome back to another episode of Decoded, a Lost Codex podcast. I am your host, Jesse, the writer, director, and narrator for the Lost Codex episodes. And today, I am joined by a special co-host. For those of you who tuned in to But Wait There's Lore last year during the 2017 season, you may remember one particular host, Shanyn. Shanyn, welcome to Decoded.
Yay, I'm so happy to be here.
Considering Pride hasn't organized But Wait There's Lore, we have to make our own But Wait There's Lore.
Take things into our own hands.
And we'll bring Dane in, and then we'll bring Pride, and this will turn into But Wait There's Lore entirely. For those of you who don't know, who have never listened into But Wait There's Lore podcast, Shanyn and I actually met on that podcast. The But Wait There's Lore podcast has been going on for, I want to say, almost 10 years. Is that right?
I think so, yeah.
Like a long time. And Pride, one of the main hosts, invited Shanyn and I at the same time, and that's where we met. Shanyn is one of the mods of the BlizzNerds Facebook group, who most commonly known for the BlizzCon parties that they have going on every year at BlizzCon. And aside from that, Shanyn, you just love all things Warcraft.
Oh yeah, I mean, I started playing back when I was 10 years old, and it's just kind of been a journey from there. I just got deeper and deeper into it every year, and it's just culminated into loving all things lore. So I'm super excited to be able to talk about it.
I love talking about things, all lore related things, so I was excited when you said you're going to come on tonight. To start things off, what we didn't do in last week's podcast episode is a little bit of a weekly news intro at the beginning, just sort of an icebreaker for you guys to listen to in case you guys missed anything. In this past week, the alpha turned into beta, which was unexpected. That there was no announcement for it, there was no prelude to it. It was just, I think it was the alpha was actually online, and a server warning came up saying, oh, by the way, It's turning to beta.
We're wiping all your stuff.
You're all gonna die in a second, and then the cataclysm hits. Shanyn, you got into the beta, didn't you?
I did get into the beta. I've been spending a lot of time on it. More time than I've spent on a beta before, just because this one's particularly exciting. Just the way the storylines are going right now. Nice
and juicy and political. Battle for Azeroth is such a... There's so many storylines you want to know, and it kind of reminds me of Cataclysm storylines, because Cataclysm had so many little plot lines going on.
Yeah, and then they all end up, they're all going to end up intertwining. But it's cool to see all the perspectives from the different storylines all culminating into one final thing, which is, I'm sure, is what's going to happen. But to see them all, grow and develop is very exciting, because I feel like the writing has just gotten so much nicer. But this is just going to be an exciting expansion.
What I'm looking forward to the most in regards to the writing is Christy Golden is now on the writers team.
Yes, and I'm so pumped.
What's really cool is all of the characters that are her babies. Bane Bloodhoof was a nobody before she came in. And, some Tauren fan out there is going to get angry that I said that. But Bane Bloodhoof was just an NPC in Mulgore. Yeah. And then until Christie's writings really started fleshing him out, Anduin is one of her characters, from the get-go. So this is Christy Golden's expansion, and I'm so excited to see where she brings Bane and Anduin and characters that aren't necessarily just hers as well, like Sylvanas and Greymane and all that. I just want to see how her writing affects the storyline. And that, a lot of things in the beta. By the way, for those listening, we're going to try to remain as vague and spoiler-free as possible. If we are going to say something that is spoiler, I'll try to give a warning for it. But we don't want you guys to ruin anything for you guys just yet. But a lot of people are freaking out over certain things that have been data mined or seen on the alpha or beta, and getting really angry. And part of me wants to get riled up right in there with the Horde and Alliance. Like, what's going on? Is this my faction? But the other part of me wants to say, let's see it play out live. This could be a red herring. Christy Golden's on board with this writing, and a lot of these characters who might be acting out of character, maybe there's something else going on there. So
exactly.
I'm pumped to see, and already we saw it in the Horde and Alliance prologue for Legion, with Anduin's talking to the crowd and Sylvanas at the dinner table and all that. Mm-hmm. Right away, that was such a powerful two different powerful cinematics in terms of it wasn't flashy, there wasn't combat, it wasn't big explosions. We didn't bawl our eyes out because Ysera died again. It was very political, and it was very like you could just see Christy Golden's writing in there right away when you saw that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So,
and she's such a fantastic writer. And so I know when she had tweeted out that, she had gotten hired on at BlizzCon or Blizzard, my first thought was like, oh my God, please do story writing for Battle for Azeroth. Like, and this is before we even knew Battle for Azeroth was a thing, but seeing Anduin grow as a character and having her more involved in that as he's kind of, he's this power now. I mean, he's no longer just Varian's son. I mean, he's the king. And having her writing that, I think it's just going to be so fantastic.
Agreed. So Battle for Azeroth turned into beta this week. That's huge because it is soon. August. It's almost May. And that expansion comes out in August. The pre-patch content is coming out probably June, probably July, somewhere around there. Yeah. So when Blizzard said at the end or beginning of Legion, end of Warlords, they made a post saying we've messed up with the content drought. But give us one more shot. They did it this time. Every single patch was bam, bam, bam. Came out at a certain. It happened to be 77 days or something between each patch, which apparently Blizzard said it was by accident. But, and the expansion not too far beyond that. So I'm so excited. It's so soon. I haven't wrapped my head around how soon it is. Yeah. When do you think the pre-patch is happening?
Pre-patch wise, I'm probably going to say we're looking at earlier mid-July. But seeing how fast the alpha went to beta, I feel like it'll be mid-July is what I'm going for.
I think somewhere around there too. I'm even willing to say end of June. And because the reason I say that is because there's quite a few chapters that are coming. We have to deal with artifact weapons, and we have to deal with Teldrassil, and that has to lead into Lordaeron. So there's quite a bit. There's three major events that haven't happened before actual Battle for Azeroth goes live. So that's so soon. But let's get into the actual content of what we're talking about today. Today's topic, we're talking about the first two allied races that are coming to the game with the launch of Battle for Azeroth. That is the Dark Iron Dwarves and the Mag'har Orcs. At BlizzCon, Dark Iron Dwarves were kind of paired alongside the Zandalari, but as we knew back in January, Zandalari will not be coming playable as an allied race until after launch. They haven't said 8.1, but it's likely going to be 8.1. I assume it's going to be 8.1 in the middle of a patch at the end. I don't see it happening. Let's talk about Dark Iron Dwarves. Dark Iron Dwarves, I'll admit, when they announced Dark Iron Dwarves at BlizzCon, did that just go over your head, Shannon? Were you excited for them, or were you eh?
I was eh.
Same. I'll admit.
It just wasn't. Yeah, it wasn't like a cool deal. I was like, oh, neat.
To me, I was like, I was really banking on Wildhammers becoming playable, and so I was like, oh man, Dark Irons, that's kind of cool. But as they've come out, as their models have expanded, seeing them on the beta and the alpha, I don't know about you, Shannon. And by the way, Shannon, you mostly play Horde, right?
I do.
Okay, and I play equal both sides, so I guess I'm not the right person to ask, but I've done a complete turnaround on Dark Irons because I am super hyped for them.
I think my hype got just way crazier when the new Chronicles book came out. Because, the basic story of the Dark Irons, right? Before, everything happens. But then diving into that book, I was like, oh my gosh.
There's so cool. Much. We'll talk about probably one of the most badass characters in a second. We're going to do a brief history. And by the way, as always, because I'm new to this for a podcast, you guys listening, if you don't like the layout of how we're doing something, please let us know. If you thought something was redundant or, we spent too much time on something, please let us know. So the breakdown that I have here is we're going to cover a brief history of the first two allied races. Well, we're going to talk about all Dark Irons and then Mag'har. So we're going to cover the brief history. We're going to talk about their in-game appearance. So models, classes, extra stuff, mounts, tabards, all that stuff. And then we're going to talk about some iconic characters and jump over to Mag'har and do the same thing. Brief history, basically. For those of you who haven't read Chronicle 1, War of the Three Hammers, the Dark Irons were one of the 3 clans to dwell within Ironforge. Relatively peaceful, there was bickering between the clans, but nothing major. They lived alongside the Wildhammer and the Bronzebeards. In Chronicle 1, it states that the Dark Irons lived in the deepest part of the city. And something to remember when you think about the actual open world of Azeroth is the world's so much bigger than what you see in game. So it doesn't take 2.5 minutes to walk from Stormwind to Goldshire in, actual lore. That would be a couple days ride. I think in the movie they said it was a 3 days ride or something from Goldshire to the movie. So not a lot of people know this or may remember this, but early alpha, or maybe it was beta for World of Warcraft, Ironforge was so much bigger. Have you seen the alpha layout of Ironforge, Shannon?
Yeah.
It is 4 stories tall, and people were complaining it was worse than Undercity to navigate. And Blizzard just cut it to a single level. So imagine this massive multi-tiered dwarven city, and the Dark Irons live at the very, very bottom. And down there, they controlled vast amounts of mineral deposits and crystal and diamond deposits. So the Dark Irons were very wealthy, and they were well known for their political scheming. But the one thing that they stood out with is they were well known for their sorcery and the practicing of magic. And that's actually going to be a huge point in lore. King Anvilmar, who was a Bronzebeard dwarf, treated the Dark Irons and other clans with respect, but when he died, all 3 clans made a move for the throne, thus broke out the War of the Three Hammers. We're not going to go deep into the lore of this, just basically covering some brief history, but Sorcerer Thane Thorison, the name Thorison is important for the Dark Irons, was the leader of the Dark Irons at the time, and he vowed revenge and struck out at both the Wildhammers and the Bronzebeards at both Grimbatol and Ironforge. Both attacks failed. Thorison got desperate and accidentally summoned Ragnaros into the world. That's one hell of a misclick, because that affected Azeroth for thousands of years after. And he died in the process. There's a beautiful piece of artwork from Chronicle 1 of Ragnaros erupting into the world and tiny little Thorison before he gets consumed by fire. And that's the history of the War of the Three Hammers. Ragnaros then enslaves the rest of the Dark Irons. They create the city Shadowforge City, and the Dark Irons basically become permanently salty for a long time. In comes Thorison's ancestor, Dagran Thorison, who you may remember as the leader of the Dark Irons in Vanilla WoW back in Blackrock Depths. Wasn't there a horde quest from Thrall to go into Blackrock Depths back in the day?
Yes, there was. And
that we'll talk about that after, because Chronicle 3, I want to do a whole episode of Chronicle 3, because it's just the one cool thing about Chronicle 3 was Blizzard had to decide which faction got credit for which kills.
Exactly, yeah.
And this comes up specifically later on. The Alliance and Horde are both going to get a little shining moment when Shannon talks about Moira later on. But Dagran Thorison was leader of the Blackrock Dark Iron Dwarves down in Blackrock Depths. We kill him back then. Canonically, he dies back then, and Moira's there. Moira Bronzebeard, daughter of Magni Bronzebeard, is there. And back in the day, there was both Alliance and Horde quest to rescue her, and she tells you to stuff it when you kill her husband. And we thought that quest line ended there. We'll come back to that later on. We're not going to spoil. We're going to cover what happens with the rest of the Dark Irons with the topic of Moira, because Moira, as Shannon said earlier, Chronicle 3 just brought out so much lore for the Dark Irons and probably makes Moira one of the coolest Alliance leaders.
Oh yeah.
To date. But let's jump over to the in-game race. Shannon, I actually have the alpha open right now. Have you looked at the customizations for Dark Irons?
Oh yeah, that was the first thing I went to. They're amazing looking. They are represented so well. I mean, I don't think seeing, a dwarf versus a Dark Iron dwarf in the game is going to be like, oh, I can't tell which one that is. Like, there's such a huge difference between the models, and I love that. Because, with the High Mountain Tauren, you look at them and they're like, oh, maybe that's a high mountain, maybe that's not a high mountain based on the antler choice, right? But these are so unique and they look so good.
I was worried at BlizzCon. I thought, how can they I got into a debate about why Wildhammers were better, and I thought tattoos and different beard styles, and I said Dark Irons is just a skin color. Like, it's just, like, it's literally in the World of Warcraft model viewer. You can turn on the Dark Iron model just by changing, or the, not Battle for Azeroth Dark Iron, but the old Dark Iron, you could just change the skin color and that was it. So I was very like, this is boring. But when the models came out, everything was so different. First of all, for those of you who haven't seen anything on Wowhead or on the actual alpha itself, Dark Irons have tattoos. And their tattoos are so cool. It's very, not Wildhammer, but it stands alone that if they ever introduce Wildhammer still has a place. The Dark Iron markings are just, I don't even know how to describe them. They stand out in both the females and the males so well. Some of them cover just the eye. Some of them are just over around the bald spots on the head. And the hairstyles for both the males and the females. The females have probably some of the coolest hairstyles.
Oh yeah.
Just badass punk rock metal. Like, the Dark Irons look so sweet in terms of their physical customizations. Blizzard kind of gave them a little cool piece of lore with their hair being fiery, which I thought was a little bit cheesy at first, but it's not too obvious. It's not like the beard's on fire. Just the tip, just the tips of the beard, or even the hairstyles glow, whether you have a red style or not. I think if you actually choose black, it still smolders and stuff like that, which is kind of cool. And as you just said, Shannon, it makes it blatantly different from a regular Bronzebeard dwarf model. You're not confused. I mean, if they're both wearing full plate and their heads are covered, maybe. But if you can see the face, you're golden. You're going to be able to tell. Classes. Were any of the classes a surprise to you when they announced the classes?
I was surprised about Paladin, to be completely honest. Like, because I figured they'd been secluded in their own, world pretty much for this entire time. I was expecting Shaman. I was definitely expecting, but Paladin kind of struck me as odd. So it was very interesting to see that, and I like the introduction of another Paladin class, even though Horde doesn't have one yet. So that was like another play point for me too, because it was just interesting to see, because I didn't expect that one at all. I expected, the spellcasters, the mages, the warlocks, the priests, shadow priests especially. But yeah, Paladin definitely struck me as odd.
Paladin, I was surprised as well. And for those of you who don't know, Dark Iron Paladins get a custom mount. They get a special ram that fits. It almost looks like it could be a perfect replacement for the actual class or racial mount for Dark Irons, because it's just this heavily, basically think the PvP ram you get from the Vicious mounts. The
Vicious gladiators.
So think the Vicious ram, but Dark Iron colors on it, Dark Iron plating. It looks totally badass. And actually, side noting away from Dark Irons, regular Dwarven Paladins get the same mount, only recolored to gold and blue. So finally, regular Dwarves won't be riding the Charger alongside the humans. That is entirely, Dwarves have their own custom mount. Blood Elves are now the only ones who don't have a custom racial mount aside from humans, so maybe that's coming next. But I was surprised with Paladin as well. I'm not angry about it. I'm like, all right, this is cool, but definitely didn't see that coming.
Yeah.
Shaman surprised me, and here's the logic why I was surprised. The Dark Dwarves in general tend to be very petty and hold grudges, and so I assumed after being enslaved for so long, they wouldn't be all harmonious with the elements. And the thing is, they're not. And this is a minor spoiler with a little quest in Battle for Azeroth, or I'll get there in a second. But essentially, I thought, before they announced shamans, I said, if they're going to allow shamans to be Dark Irons to be shamans, I would love to see a little bit of a darker shaman. The whole shaman class theme, especially in Legion, is this unity, uniting the elements. It's all Thrall, Cataclysm, reminiscent about that, and all good stuff. There's never any evil shaman in terms of the Alliance players. We've seen Garrosh as evil shaman, and Magatha, she's a dick, and all these other evil, darker shamans. But that's not the player class fantasy. It's always supposed to be about uniting. And then I thought, you know what? A Dark Iron wouldn't be all about being up in the fire elemental's good side, especially when Ragnaros enslaved them for thousands of years. So I expected almost like a goblin relationship with the elements, in that they're angry, they're holding a grudge, and they're petty. And what's kind of cool is, the Horde is very... Shamanism originates with the Horde, and especially Tauren and orcs of the current non-Garrosh generation. They're all about the elemental unity. So it'd be kind of cool for the Alliance to have a little bit of a darker themed, and have these asshole shamans just being abusive to the elements. And because the Alliance is all butterflies and rainbows, there's never any questionable... And I say this as an Alliance player, the Alliance doesn't do much that's questionable. The Horde has plenty. The Alliance usually responds to that, and that's the whole base of the game. But
it's like the shaman for the Dark Irons. They more force the relationship between the elements. They're controlling it. It's not, like you said, it's not this unity. And that is what made me think maybe Dark Irons would be good as shaman, because they're almost taking revenge upon at least the fire elements. And it's cool to see the other side of it. We're not going to be buddy-buddy. Like, you're going to help me, and you're going to do this because I'm stronger than you.
And that's exactly, kind of spoilery, kind of the feeling I get when I see these Dark Iron NPCs in-game in Battle for Azeroth. They're not called, like, Farseers and shamans like that. They're called Earthbreakers, and they have these cool titles. I can only think of Earthbreakers at the top of my head, but there's one quest, a little bit spoilery. Dark Iron set up a camp somewhere on Zandalar, and there's a goblin mining operation going on, Horde goblins, and the Dark Irons just rip this fire elemental from the Firelands and send it. Think the Uldum quest where you get to run over 1,000,000 gnomes.
Gnome obliteration. But
now goblin style. And it's actually it's this, you run around as this giant molten elemental and you just slaughter thousands of goblins, and the Dark Irons are like laughing. This is funny to them, and it's darker, but it's not like, hey, can you help us out? It's they send in this magma elemental, and it's gruesome. So I'm all for, even though I didn't see it coming, I'm all for Dark Iron shamans. Their totems are cool. Their totems are anvils, which is just awesome. Hunters get a Dark Hound pet. You remember those little hounds running around Blackrock Depths? They got an updated model, and that is the specifically the fiery looking one is the starting hunter pet. Rogues can be Dark Irons, can be rogues. Dark Irons can be monks, and I guess there's really no theme with monks nowadays. High Mountain can be monks, sure. Nightborn can be monks, sure. Lightforge can be monks. Oh no, they can't. And what? Why? But Dark Irons can be monks, so no one's surprised. Mage and Warlock, obviously, and specifically Priest in relation to Moira, Shadow Priest, as you said earlier. We'll get there in a second. And Warrior, obviously, Warriors make sense. Their racial mount is a single-headed Corehound, which is really weird to look at. And is it not unsettling to look at?
It's weird because the only Corehounds you've really ever seen are two-headed, and so it's kind of awkward to look at. Actually, I haven't seen it in the beta yet. I want to see how it walks around, what it looks like there. But yeah, it is a little bit off-putting.
That's exactly the best way to describe it, is because, and like you think if you were to describe it, oh, it's a fiery dog with cool scales. That doesn't sound bad. But when you're so used to, Corehounds have been in the game since vanilla, and a lot of anyone who here who's played since vanilla, Molten Core is one of our first memories of raiding. They're one of the first mobs you pull, so seeing a single-headed one is kind of like, I remember I saw it data mined and I flinched. I was like, what is that? And
that must be wrong.
That's wrong. That is not allowed. But it works. I'm a little bit confused.
It does, and I think it's cool to see because I think the only other red Corehound mount in the game came from the Molten Core Anniversary. And so not a lot of people have that mount. And so it's really cool to see another Corehound mount in the game because I think they look they're so cool looking. But it's just the single head really, really threw me for a loop. I'm sure it'll grow on me. But definitely the first time I saw it, I was like, are they done with this yet? Did they just like forget to add the other head?
It's missing. Or
is this how it's gonna be?
Agreed. But it's growing on me. As I said, I need to see it in game too. I need to see it live. Yeah. Their racial armor is amazing. We saw that at BlizzCon. Heavy plate with runes on it. And actually Ian on stage used this specific armor as a way to reveal that it's going to be cosmetic. So you can be this fire spec mage wearing this awesome plate set, which is just really cool. Kind of fits the dwarven theme of Battlecaster. The tabards just standalone look amazing because they go right up the neck and they actually are they're armored in appearance. So even if you don't use the racial armor, and when you're leveling your dark iron, you could look kind of badass with just the tabard over your robes or whatever, just because it's the first time a tabard has looked armored. It looks like it's a plate tabard, which looks dope and definitely fits for dark irons. The racials were just officially confirmed actually a couple builds ago, but Blizzard just put out a preview page talking about dark irons and Maggar, so we have the official look at the racials. Couple obvious ones. Fireblood purges debuffs and empowers themselves. In-game, it actually has a really cool lava effect, so when you pop it, your character glows all fiery, more fiery than you already do. Dungeon Delver moves faster indoors, which that is... I didn't expect that for a racial for dwarves, because you wouldn't think of a speed increase for dwarves.
Yeah.
I think of Gimli yelling, like, we dwarves are natural sprinters. But I'm like, that's a very OP racial. That's pretty... Yeah. That's awesome, because you always see outside speed increases.
Yeah, never inside.
Never inside. So that's, you know what? I'm okay with it. And I think that, like, on the page it says the dark irons, their time spent in the depths lets dark irons move faster. I'm like, you know what? Yeah. Sure, that works.
Well, it makes sense. I mean, they've been inside their whole lives, so you would think they would, I don't know inside environments better than outside. Who knows? But it makes sense.
It does.
Just didn't expect it.
Same. Mass production increases blacksmithing skill and I think the crafting speed of it. Forged in Flames, I think it says like less -1% damage or something like that. And then Mole Machine, we still don't know what Mole Machine does. The official Blizzard wording is, these digging devices can transport their masters to new locations. So
see, I almost want to feel like it's an astral recall for shamans. It's like a second Hearthstone. That's what I get from it, because I can't imagine you being able to pick different locations. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like you set it to somewhere and it's like a second Hearthstone.
That's a fair way to look at it, because if you could set it to different places, that kind of intrudes on engineers and their wormhole generators. If it goes to Blackrock Depths, there's a whole toy dedicated to that, to the Mole Machine that brings it to Blackrock Depths. So setting it to your Hearthstone, I think that's a fair idea. We don't know yet, though. We haven't apparently it doesn't work on beta, or I haven't tried it on beta. I haven't heard any confirmation, so I assume that no one else has been able to get it to work.
Sure.
So Mole Machine, we don't know what it does, but Shannon says Hearthstone. That sounds like a good idea. That sounds. I hadn't actually thought of that, and that's the most basic idea that works without intruding on engineers or existing toys. And having a group of set locations, that'd be pretty OP as a racial. You know, that's pretty much all dark irons are mages, because you can set all these other locations. We're gonna get into some iconic dark irons. I'm gonna cover the first two very fast because Shannon's gonna just gush about Moira. Thorison the First. I mentioned him earlier, one of the 3 dwarven leaders during the War of the Three Hammers. His wife, Modgud, wielded Xalatath at one point, back during that war. We did an episode on Xalatath, and Diva Gregory talks about Modgud and the attack on the Wildhammer homeland, or fortress rather, of Grim Batol. And then Thorison the First accidentally summoned Ragnaros. He was trying to pull fire magic from Azeroth, and in his grief, in his rage, he had just lost so many members of his army. His wife was just killed. He clicked the wrong button, summoned Ragnaros. That went to hell. He died. Ragnaros enslaved everyone. Rip. Further down the line, we've got Thorison II, who is the final boss of Blackrock Depths, kidnapped Moira Bronzebeard. And the one thing that we learned in Chronicle is, despite his hatred for the Bronzebeards and Ironforge, he did want to free his people from the chains of Ragnaros. I'm going to hand it over to Shanyn because that comes up right away. Shanyn, take it away with Moira.
All right. So for those of you that don't know, Moira is the daughter. She's the estranged daughter of Magni Bronzebeard. When she was kidnapped, word got back to Magni, and he assumed she had been ensorcelled. You know, there was no way his daughter was willingly staying there. But the truth was that she did fall in love with Dagran, and actually married him. Magni never thought that women could rule as well as men. So Moira had this kind of underlying hatred, like, I'm the rightful heir to Ironforge, and I can lead as well as a man could. And Dagran actually, you know, he encouraged that. He said, you know, you are the heir, you can lead as well. And he respected her. And I think that's one of the reasons she was so drawn to him. And it made sense. And so, you know, Magni wouldn't understand that. And I'm sure, you know, he was a little confused about it. So basically, Magni sends a team to kill Dagran and rescue Moira, but she refuses to leave. She actually announces instead she's pregnant, and her son's going to be the rightful heir to both Ironforge and the Dyke Iron. Now, of course, she's super mad at Dad for killing her husband. So she's just in this fury of, you know, I've lost my husband, I've lost, you know, my clan almost. So now what can I do to, you know, make this better? After Dagran was slain, she used the chaos within Shadowforge City, and she spread the rumor that Dark Irons were being forced to make an army for Rag. She made sure that the world knew that all these treasures and artifacts were waiting within Ragnaros' lair, and that prompted the heroes, both Alliance and Horde, to raid Ragnaros' sanctum, Molten Core, and they did banish him back to the Firelands.
I'm gonna just jump in here for a second,
yeah.
And this is one of those moments that I think both of us freaked out when we were reading Chronicle. Is, you know, Blizzard decided to give both Molten Core credit to Horde and Alliance, which I think is kind of cool because it's like the first raid people jumped into. So that was kind of cool. But what struck out at me was, I never would have imagined years down the line that the lore reason for Ragnaros falling was because of Moira Bronzebeard and spreading those rumors. And I was kind of like, whoa, I'm gonna stop now, and because there's more to this whoa, because it gets better. Keep going.
So once she knew her plan had worked, so there were Dark Iron that didn't, you know, take to her ruling. They doubted her. You know, they were like, you know, she came in, she just married our king, and she's here to, you know, usurp his throne and do this. Well, after that happened, they were like, I like this chick. I think I could follow her. So with Ragnaros dead, though, Nefarian and the other black dragons, the Black Arcs of the True Horde, they controlled the upper reaches of Blackrock Mountain. So to protect her people, Moira sent spies into the world to spread, again, these rumors and whispers of, you know, what's going on within Blackrock. She made sure specifically that the Horde learned that Dalaran Blackhand had allied with the Black Dragons, and Thrall actually sent his champions to dispose of this false war chief. So eventually, you know, they cut through Upper Spire and Blackwing Lair and killed Nefarian. This was one of the first times we kind of recognized that solely the Horde was responsible. Something that came out in Chronicle for claiming Nefarian. You know, the Alliance really had nothing to do with it, lore-wise. And I think that was really cool to see that they had kind of like this claim to those encounters specifically.
So to see that officially canonized is kind of like, oh, that's cool, because Blizzard thought the same thing. Okay, Onyxia, the daughter of Deathwing, gets killed by Alliance officially. Horde had nothing to do with it. Sorry, Horde, you had nothing to do with her death. Actually, Alliance didn't have anything to do with her death either. Varian is the one who killed her. Yeah. But they repaid the favor by not only giving Lower Blackrock Spire and Upper Blackrock Spire to the Horde and killing Blackhand's, or Blackhand's son, Dalrend, but the son of Deathwing also is given to the Horde, which I thought, you know what, that's cool. That's a fair
trade.
Fair trade for them to do it. And again, Nefarian and Dalrand fell because Moira spread those rumors from the depths of Blackrock Mountain. She sent out her spies. All this time we thought Moira was just this, she was dressed up in Princess Leia robes back in Vanilla next to Thoresen, and we never saw her again. We thought, okay, she's gonna, and then she comes back in Cataclysm, and it's kind of cool, but whatever. We didn't know that all this time she's been doing all this stuff behind the scenes, and lore-wise, there's no reason for us to know. So learning this in Chronicle is kind of cool, because it's almost as if like she has been doing this behind the scenes, and we had no idea that Nefarian, Ragnaros, and Dalrend Blackhand all fell because she was like, you know what? No, they're in my way. And then she didn't do it herself. She got us to do it because she bribed us with loot, and and
it worked.
And it worked.
I think, just to go off a little more, you just never would have expected it. And I think it was The Shattering, the book, that goes out into what we're about to talk about next. You really learn a lot about Moira. I mean, she's been overlooked for so many years. So you're just kind of like, oh yeah, she's there. She's just, sad or died. But I never ever would have thought that she was the reason behind all that. Anyways,
and I'm gonna go back to what we said at the very beginning. She is another Christy Golden character. Where she was just this NPC like Bane. Her and Bane were just they have iconic last names. They're the kids of two racial leaders, and that's it. And you could actually kill her back in Vanilla if you wanted, because she dropped some bonus loot, and that was it. And in The Shattering, I totally just overlooked this. Christy gives her character. Christy brings her to life, and so
so continuing her story. So following the Cataclysm, a lot of the Dark Irons actually reverted back to their old ways, and swore allegiance to Ragnaros. She saw kind of the problems within Ironforge as a means to rescue her people and claim her rightful place at the same time. So after she hears of Magni, his petrification into Diamond, she returned to Ironforge with her son, her infant son, to claim the throne. She was an aggressive, ruled with an iron fist type thing, like, this is mine and I'm taking it. So at that time, Anduin was actually in Ironforge, and she was holding him hostage.
Whoops.
While they both realized, hey, we're the kids of two very powerful leaders, they started having political conversations, and Moira had confided in Anduin, about her father not thinking she was fit to rule, and her actually dropping her guard allowed Anduin to escape, and he actually makes it out to Theramore, meets with Jaina. So Varian finds out. He's super mad. He takes some operatives to go and assassinate her. As he's about to, take her head, Anduin convinces his dad to spare her, stating she's the rightful heir to the throne, and she could potentially be the key to unite the dwarves. So Varian saves her, or spares her, under the stipulation that she's going to have to unite the dwarves if this is ever going to work. So from then, we saw the Council of the Three Hammers formed with herself, Mirrodin, and Falstad. So that was a huge, huge deal, because we saw the dwarves go back to this kind of colloquial, it's not just one person ruling, it's the multiple clans, and their representatives. And so in Legion, more recently, we see her in the embassy in Stormwind, kind of being, secondhand advisor to Anduin. And they have a discussion about potential races being added to the Alliance, and this is where Dark Irons come in. This is where they have their in. She has a specific quote that, the Alliance has need of their warriors as well as their sorcery, because the Dark Irons aren't anything to mess with. I mean, you've got these amazing warriors, and then you've also got these crazy mages, warlocks, shadow priests. I mean, they've been deep in magic, and they're dangerous, but she sees fit to kind of push them in with the Alliance because that's a good place for them to be, and it's going to be beneficial to them both. She's just, with Chronicle 3 coming out, she's such an amazing character. We learned so much about her, And it's cool to see another like I don't want to say villain, but non-villainous female character. Because, you know, a lot of girls love Sylvanas because she's this powerful, like, awesome, crazy woman character. But the Alliance hasn't really ever had that. They've never really had this, you know, kind of woman role model. And I think she definitely fills the gap. So I'm very interested to see how she continues going forward.
Moira is probably one of the coolest things to come out of Chronicle 3.
Yeah.
Kudos to Matt Burns and Robert Brooks for that. Mechatork as a total side is also amazing, and that I won't talk about him here, but Mechatork and Moira are the MVPs of Chronicle 3 for the Alliance, specifically. But a little bit of a spoiler, Moira says we don't really know what happens, the specific scenario that brings the Dark Irons officially into the Alliance, but there is a quote that was data mined where Anduin apologizes for not officially welcoming the Dark Irons before, like never fully acknowledging that. Mm-hmm. And I wonder if, because there is the scenario data mined file is called Blackrock Depths Dark Iron something. So assuming the scenario takes place in Blackrock Depths, I wonder if it's going to be dealing with the rest of those Dark Irons who are not in favor of Moira, because they're still around. There's still Twilight Council cultists, Dark Iron. And the thing to remember about Moira is she is not a Dark Iron dwarf herself. She is Bronzebeard full blood. Yep. But she leads the Dark Irons, and most of them were okay with her. Some of them reverted back, as Shannon said, during the Cataclysm. And actually, in the questing zone for dwarves in Cataclysm, you find out that one of her ambassadors in Ironforge was plotting against her, and you arrest him, and you never know what happens because of that. So I'm curious to see what the official scenario is. We know nothing about it, so we can't even talk about it here. There's little bits of data mine pieces, but we don't really know what's going on with that. I think that compared to what I thought at BlizzCon, Dark Irons are one of the Alliance races that I'm really looking forward to re-rolling. I don't know what I'm going to do with all these alts. I don't know where I'm going to get the time for all this, but right. I am so ready for a badass. Like, you look at them and you see the Dark Iron picture, and they look, when I look at them, I think of like Sith Lords from Star Wars, just with the markings on their face and just the darkness to them. So I'm excited to see some I don't want to say evil connotations with the Alliance, but you know,
like a darker, yeah.
As you said, the Dark Irons are not to be messed with. And I'm really excited to see where that goes. Moving on to the Magar. And right off the bat, we'll say that Magar means uncorrupted in Orcish. A lot of people were confused when it was first data mined, thinking, oh, the Magar, the reputation from Outland. Thinking, oh, that's the name of a tribe. And it's like, no, it's literally a word. It's literally a translated word. I do see the confusion because they never use the word Magar in Warlords of Draenor. Yeah. That never pops up. But we know 100% that the Magar coming to the Horde in Battle for Azeroth are alternate universe orcs, which can get slippery, and we'll get there in just a second. We're going to talk about the brief history. Warlords of Draenor is a recent expansion, right before Legion, and pretty much the premise with what happens there is after Garrosh is overthrown from the Siege of Orgrimmar, he has a trial. He escapes his trial with the help of a bronze dragon, and Kairaz brings him back to an alternate Draenor. Kairaz wants to unite the orcs into this unstoppable army to fight the demons, to fight the Burning Legion. Garrosh has other plans, kills Kairaz, and decides to do what Kairaz was going to do, unite the orcs, but for a different purpose. He unites the clans with Grommash, prevents his alternate father from drinking the blood of Manaroth, and one of the things that people forget or maybe not know or realize is in the Hellscream short story, which I highly recommend everyone go read, Grom is shown a vision. Garrosh shows Grom a vision at the Throne of Elements, but he's very selective with what he shows them, and he shows the orcs falling to the corruption of demons. He shows them invading Azeroth, and he shows them in internment camps, and he shows all the negative things about the orcs, telling Grom, you can prevent this. Azeroth is a threat. Legion, the Burning Legion, demons, Gul'dan is a threat. All this is bad. He stops showing him the vision when Thrall comes around in the vision. He doesn't show the orcs being liberated. He doesn't let alternate Grom see what happens with main Grom. He doesn't allow this, to see that the orcs do come out of their spiral of villainhood. And there's going to be some alliance people listening to this who still sees orcs as just villains, but Thrall's orc generation does rise up out of the ashes of the Burning Legion minions, and Garrosh doesn't let Grom see that, which is very particular in why Grom was a villain in the expansion. The Warlords of Draenor campaign starts. We see the cinematic where Gul'dan tries to convince Grom to drink. They kill Manaroth, blah, blah, blah. And they decide to invade Azeroth. And they decide to bring in all the clans. And where I think Grom's biggest mistake was too many battlefields at once. He started too many campaigns at once. He didn't even conquer Draenor before he turned to Azeroth.
Moved on to another world, yeah.
Yeah, he's like, we're good. We're 70% there. And decided to attack Azeroth. And that was the biggest mistake. In the short story, Grom asks about the Draenei and says, what about them? Gul'dan says they're a threat. Are they a threat? And Garrosh says, no, they're not a threat, but they're going to get in the way eventually. And prompting Grommash and the Iron Horde to attack the Draenei without warning, which a lot of people screamed and raved about. The original orcs at least had corruption by Kil'jaeden. These orcs didn't, so it just proves that orcs are bad in general. But what I'm going to propose is, was Grommash wrong? Absolutely, he was wrong in attacking the Draenei for no reason, but you can draw parallels to Ner'zhul being duped by Kil'jaeden. Garrosh was very selective in what he told him. And exactly. I've talked with someone else about this. The thing to remember about the orcs is, Draenor is not Azeroth. So the orcs live in a world where literally everything around them, since the dawn of time, has tried to eat, stomp, or kill them. Ogres, Gron, Ogron, Magnaron, Saberon, the Botani, literally everything on Draenor is giant and scary. Which is why Draenor is just this cesspool of violence and war. Not that Azeroth isn't, but everything is wild and feral on Draenor. Everything is trying to eat you. And so the orcs have developed this war. The orcs are a war-driven race. They come from a world that, for generations, they've had to survive, kill or survive. So when something tells them that their neighbor is going to kill them, unless they kill them first, the orcs aren't going to stop and think about it. They're not going to go, well, are they? Are they though? They're not going to sit there and go, So when Kil'jaeden, disguised as his ancestor, said to Ner'zhul, yeah, the Draenei are bad, and he was like, are they though? And then all the other shamans were like, yeah, we got the same voicemail from this spirit saying they're bad. They kind of went, okay, I guess they are bad. And
I guess it's truth.
I guess it's truth. And the thing to remember is the spirits and the ancestors don't lie to the orcs. So why would the orcs have any reason to doubt them? Sure, the Draenei were innocent, but the spirits, they didn't know that. And same with what Garrosh told Grom is, they're going to get in the way eventually. He said that they were a threat and that they were eventually, and he wasn't wrong. Garrosh knew that if the Azeroth world, the Azeroth fighters got involved in this war, the Draenei would join up with the other Draenei. And not that it's right, but Grommash suddenly had the idea, okay, what do we do with them then? They're a threat that's dormant right now. And that's not just something for orcs. They don't go, oh, we'll deal with it when it comes. They'll stomp it out before it gets to become a threat. Anyone who watches my streams or knows me knows I'm a huge Draenei fan. So I'm not justifying Draenei slaughter. I am just trying to reword this in terms of, what is it as black and white as we see? Did he go, oh, the Draenei are bad, I'm cool with it, and just suddenly start massacring? And orcs are violent by nature. We see some orcs are way more crazy than others. Example, Blackrock orcs in Garrosh's Horde with Malkorok and how cruel and unusually vicious those orcs were. Orcs have a temperament of totally insane and violent to, okay, they're pretty calm. So some orcs were, all you gotta say is, yep, go ahead and kill it, and they will rip it apart, while other orcs like Durotan or Gunnar will just kill it as a warrior would. On to the Warlords campaign. They try to invade Azeroth. Azeroth says no, pushes back, cuts off some of the Iron Horde who make it to Blackrock Spire. That's a failed storyline. That goes nowhere with Zayla. That dies. We sweep into Draenor like a wildfire, and we just clear house. Every single clan falls before us in the leveling zones. Shadowmoon and Thunderlords are first to fall for Horde and the Alliance. Blackrocks are scattered both in Gorgon and Talador. Rip Doomhammer. Doomhammer is probably one of the worst storylines to come out of Warlords of Draenor, because they did not do Doomhammer any justice.
No justice.
Actually, rip Doomhammer, though. The Warsong are dismantled. Garrosh is slain. The Burning Blade is broken. Kargath and the Shattered Hand, we don't really see what happens to them. Kargath gets defeated, killed in the arena, and we just don't see the Shattered Hand again until in 6.2 with Hellfire. The clans fall to the Horde and Alliance. Gul'dan swoops in and corrupts the Bleeding Hollow. Iron Horde survivors are mass recruited. Some of them don't give in. We see that Blackrock orc who helps the Horde and Alliance in their garrison. He builds ships. We see the shipwright. We see some orcs who have survived. We see Iron Horde orcs who aren't cool with Gul'dan doing this. And they say no. They don't join Gul'dan. And a lot of Gul'dan's Fell Horde is specifically Bleeding Hollow and Shattered Hand. And we don't see many... We see some Blackrocks, but we don't see many Warsongs, and we don't see many Shadow Moons. There's a handful, but not many. But we don't see many Thunderlords either. Obviously, in Hellfire, there are remnants of these different clans. There is a Shadow Moon boss, and I think there's a Thunderlord boss. But for the most part, the Bleeding Hollows are the majority of the Fell Horde, along with the Shattered Hand. Frostwolves and Horde, Draenei and Alliance push into Hellfire, free Grommash, and now we get to the controversial cinematic, where Grommash raises Gorehowl and yells, "Draenor is free." We see Draenei cheering, we see Warsong orcs cheering. Shanyn, what are your thoughts on that cinematic?
Are they really free? I don't think they are. I just don't, I can't ever imagine that Draenor is going to be a peaceful place. Not only because of the flora there, but because of just the history of it. That cinematic it confused me. Because I just didn't believe it. Like, it didn't speak to me like a lot of the other cinematics did. You know, I wasn't like super into it. I was like, meh, maybe. But I don't know how this is gonna play out in the future, you know?
And I think what happened with that cinematic, obviously, I don't want to get into the big whole, the problems with Warlords of Draenor, but there were problems with Warlords, and there were story elements that didn't unfold properly.
Yeah.
And I think all of that came crashing down towards the end of the expansion. And in that 3 minutes, the cinematics team had to cover several main plot lines.
Yep.
Archimonde dying, or Archimonde throwing Gul'dan through the portal, then Archimonde dying, then the orcs realizing what's over, Yrel's final goodbye with for Khadgar, and then a dramatic final pose. Yeah. And that's a lot to happen. And there was a lot more. What happened? The biggest mistake is, or question is, Grommash started this. So why does he get to yell, Draenor is free? And the one thing that I've been pushing, that I really, and I don't want to get too, there's some spoilers, but I want to have faith that Blizzard realizes that, sees the feedback of that, sees that it's almost a meme at this point of Draenor is free, and realizes, okay, there is a problem here with Grommash yelling this and nothing happening after. Now, I have talked to several people at BlizzCon about this, gotten into some debates. It's one of my favorite topics because story-wise, this is a living... Let's not look at it from a story writing perspective. Let's not look at it from a game. Let's pretend it was real. There is a response to that after, okay? And in that moment, the orcs and the Draenei are cheering because Archimonde, in his final battle, tries to rip apart Draenor. I believe in the Mythic phase, there's an ability called, like, Destroy Draenor or something. And they just stopped the apocalypse from happening. So everyone's on this victory high of, holy crap, we did it.
It's an adrenaline rush.
It's an adrenaline rush.
Yeah.
No one's going to say, Grom picks up the axe and says, Draenor is free. No one's going to go, excuse me, right away.
You started this.
Everyone's going, holy crap, they're kicking Archimonde's face and they're all, like, they're dancing. The impossible has happened. The Burning Legion has been stopped. Khadgar turns into a bird and flies away. Then, after the cinematic, after they do the dramatic Yrel, Durotan, Grommash pose, Durotan should slowly do a head turn towards Grommash and go, wait a minute. After that high fades away, everyone kind of looks at Grom going, okay, now what? And it's a fair point. Grom did start all of this, and Garrosh isn't around to have fingers pointed at him anymore.
Exactly.
Gul'dan through the... Sorry, go ahead, Jen.
Because I was going to say, we really have no knowledge of what's been happening on Draenor at all. From a game perspective, it's over. Like, we heard, Yrel say, hey, we're here if you ever need us. Like, okay, but, what's going on in Draenor as we speak? And I think there's a lot to be speculated on there. Because, like you said, Durotan, out of all people, I would assume after that battle high wears off that he's going to be like, we wouldn't even be in this position if it weren't for Grommash. And I think definitely without Garrosh being there to kind of ignite those furies, it just can't have a good ending. Like, it just can't be that peaceful, oh, yay, we're free, Archimonde's dead, and we're all going to get along and be buddy-buddy.
Things should right away come crashing down. But as you just said, Durotan of everybody, right? Durotan's dad is killed in the prelude for the Iron Horde. The reason Gunnar is in Tanan Jungle, they reference Garad, and they reference... So, like, Durotan's brother is dead because of this, because of the Iron Horde. Like, he's got so much. Yrel's sister is dead because of Ner'zhul. Both of them are going to look at Grom and go, really? You started this, and Garrosh isn't there to take the fall for it, and he shouldn't take the fall because Grommash was the war chief of the Iron Horde. A lot of people say that Yrel should impale Grom's head on a spike, and I remember talking to some people at BlizzCon, Blizzard developers included, and they kind of went, did no one pay attention to Yrel's storyline? That's not Yrel.
That's not her at all.
No, that's Maraud. Maraud would have made a spike himself and done it, but Yrel isn't Maraud. And so definitely the Draenei would be like, let's kill him. And, to us, we wouldn't forgive easily. But Velen is the most forgiving character in the entire... He forgives Garrosh at his trial for the crimes of the orcs, which is a big deal. People say it's bad story writing, but it's like, is it? I can't put myself in the shoes of a 25,000-year-old man. I can't fathom that.
And we know from his writing that that's his character. That is his, and same with Yrel. I mean, there's a reason that alternative Maraud didn't live. There's a reason that she's now where she is. And I'm curious to see how that impacts Draenor now, because she would take after Velen. She would say, okay, we could, murder Grommash in cold blood and say, okay, now it's really over. We're free. You're the one that caused this. But that's not her character, and that's not how she's going to want the Draenei to be.
One thing I'll point out, in the cinematic, we see Warsong Orcs cheering. So Warsong Orcs were present in that final battle. And I think that there is a story to tell, as you said, after this. It's not just... People think, because we didn't see it happen, that Grommash just gets set free and everything is hunky-dory. But we don't see that happen. And just because it happens off-screen doesn't mean it doesn't happen. Example, Moira. Moira did all the stuff in the background. And maybe Blizzard doesn't actually have an answer. Maybe maybe bad story writing will eventually be the end result of this. But I want to believe that after that cinematic ends, after Khadgar leaves, after we get our loot and go home, everyone looks at Grom and says, what about you? And that's not for us to deal with. That's not Azeroth's responsibility.
Exactly.
And I'll challenge anyone who says that we have a right to order or to play a role in Gromash's execution or decision to be executed, because Azeroth got its revenge when we butchered every single clan across Draenor and put everyone to the sword. There are remnants of those clans left. We swept through. I have the achievements to prove it. They're all gone. So let Draenor decide his fate. Now, the next couple of minutes, I will warn anyone who wants to avoid spoilers or potential spoilers. There are some data mine stuff I'm going to be mentioning here. So if you don't want to be spoiled, now's your chance to pause it. I would give it a couple minutes, 5 minutes at max. I'll be quick. So, in the recent data mines, we have seen, did you see the new Gromash model, Shanyn?
Yes.
He's old.
Oh.
He's got gray hair. He's white-haired. And the jokes for the Mag'har reference War Chief Hellscream, War Chief Gromash. And you go to the page Blizzard linked. This is the description for Mag'har. For untold generations, the Orc clans of Draenor battled one another in endless war. But when Gul'dan offered them the blood of his demonic masters, the disparate tribes of Mag'har, the Orcish word for uncorrupted, there's Blizzard highlighting that, refused the dark bargain and banded together to drive out the Burning Legion. A little bit watering down the Warlords expansion. United under the leadership of Gromash Hellscream, the Mag'har pledged to one day repay Azeroth's heroes for aiding their cause. As war against the Alliance intensifies, the Horde must call upon the might of the Mag'har to seize the victory. I find it funny that they pledge to one day repay Azeroth's heroes, but then screw you, Alliance. But the thing to take note from this is Gromash is in charge of all of the orcs after Warlords. What happens?
Yeah.
And Gromash isn't the leader of the Mag'har. He doesn't come to Azeroth as far as I know from the data mines. We actually get another character called Gaiara, which is very interesting because that's Durotan's mother's name, Gaia. And so people speculate, is Gaiara Durotan and Draka's alternate daughter?
Alternate daughter, yeah.
Is this alternate Thrall coming through as the leader of the Mag'har? We don't know, but Gaiara is an interesting name. Gromash is an old model. There's no older in appearance. There's no reference of him dying. There's no reference of him being killed. Maybe he does so in the cinema in the scenario, but something happens after, and this has sparked a lot of outrage in that, okay, he does survive after Warlords, and he does just get to live his days hunky-dory, but does he? We don't know what happens, and I could be wrong. Maybe nothing happens, and Blizzard just drops the ball, and I want to hope they don't. I want to hope that they have an answer. They acknowledge, okay, it's a bit weird for Gromash to say Draenor is free and then get away with everything he did.
Yeah.
It's a bit weird for us to have a trial for Garrosh, but for them not to have a trial for Gromash.
Yeah.
Maybe Durotan challenges Gromash to Mak-Gura. And maybe he kills him. Maybe Gromash wins. And to orcs, they're like, that's good enough for me. Well, whatever, we're cool. What's the Draenei's thoughts? We know nothing about the Draenei from alternate Draenor. So Yrel's story is still yet to be revealed, but Gromash is in charge of the Mag'har, and the clans still do identify as the clans, because when the Mag'har troops join the Horde, there is a troop for every single clan. There is a Warsong Outrider, there is a Shadow Mooncaster, there is a Laughing Skull, Thunderlord, Blackrock, Frostwolf, everyone. All the clans are alive in some way. So what is happening? Who knows? And I definitely want to come back and talk about this as a topic, as a standalone topic, because there's so much that can go on here. Let's move on to the in-game models. In-game skin variations. What did you think when you saw them? Go.
I love how they're representing all the different orcs. Like, it is literally not just like, the brown Mag'har orcs. It is all of them. It's, you've got the one I found the most interesting that I've always loved, the Bleeding Hollow. I was their markings were super cool, and I was like flipping through the skins, and I was like, oh my god, look at their markings on their bot. Like, they just look so cool. that, and then like the laughing skull with all their scars everywhere. They did that really, really well. That it's not just, because I was speaking to someone about, the Magar orcs going in there, and they're like, oh, the ones in like Nagrand and Outland, they're brown, and I was like, but it's so good. And the females, like, I was looking at their models, they're ripped. They look so cool. I've never wanted to play an orc female until now.
They are not to be messed with. They look just so vicious. And I think for the males, it really helps with the new upright posture, which is both for regular orcs and Magar. I loved how they covered the bases, again, with all the clans. Not only do they have the Laughing Skull / Shadowed Hand. The Shadowed Hand orcs from Warlords had a unique model. It was an NPC model, and all the blades and stuff were all custom to that model. So we're not going to get those same models from Warlords, but the grayish, whitish skin color with the scars on it, that could be Laughing Skull or Shadowed Hand. But then they also have the same skin color with no scars, and that's the Shadow Moon color. Then we have Blackrocks, Warsong with tattoos, Warsong or just regular brown orcs with no tattoos, Bleeding Hollow, which is like a reddish brown, and the Bleeding Hollow with the reddish brown with the white marking. So they covered all the bases.
Yes.
Something people have wanted for so long. Classes were really surprising. What class surprised you the most?
Probably, like, it shouldn't come to a surprise to me at this point, but monks. Like, seems like everything is monk nowadays, but everything else seemed to fit, and I kept trying to talk myself into monk and why it would work. That was the only one that truly threw me for a loop. The others make sense.
Here's why monk. I was excited when monk was confirmed. I was pushing for monks before they announced it, and as you said, everyone's a monk these days, and the monk class fantasy. And I really hope Blizzard expands on this one day. It's so much more than just Kung Fu and Pandaren. And that's the problem with every monk set looks amazing on a Pandaren. Not on anyone else.
Not so much on other models.
And other monks are just fighters with their bare fists, and they maybe use weapons or like a staff or something. They have their brews, and they have the spirit energy of chi, or just the spirit energy of spirit. But it doesn't have to be just drunken Pandaren Kung Fu style class fantasy. And that's where Orc, specifically Magar Orc, comes into play with the Burning Blade. Because the Burning Blade Orcs, we've seen through Samwise's sketches, they love wearing those beads. They love wearing the beads. They're very samurai-ish.
Yeah.
Samuro, specifically from Heroes of the Storm, has the split into 3 ability, which monks have. The Earth, Fire, Storm, whatever it's called. Storm, Earth, Fire, or whatever. And Samuro is often seen with brews hanging around his pouch. And, he's got the samurai-like kilt. And monks have a lot of fire abilities, specifically with like fire breath and the flaming keg and all that. So I finally feel that orc monks, Magar monks, fit this alternate possibility for what monks could be in the Burning Blade. Finally, and I hope they expand on it in some way. It's a little bit like you have to kind of force yourself into that fantasy when you're making it. You have to make yourself, you transmog to make yourself look like a orcish blade master. But it can work, and I'm happy they went with it. Priest, I was surprised they did Priest. I'm happy they did Priest, but I'm surprised that they put it through. Priests with Ner'zhul, mages and Shadow Moon orcs, generally looking up to the stars and celestial magic, that makes sense. I was surprised, mages a little bit surprised about priests specifically, shadow priests. Yeah. Orc priests in general, you think of like an orc holy priest, a little bit weird. But
it's weird,
You think about the Shadow Moon.
Shadow Moon, Shadow Priest, like that makes sense to me. Just because even like leveling through Shadow Moon and seeing all the kind of Shadow Priests, like that's what I think of when I think Shadow Moon orc. That or Warlock,
Exactly. Warlock obviously was not allowed as a class because defeats the purpose of the name itself. Shamans, obviously, and what's really cool is the Magar Orc totems.
They're so good.
one of the things I love about data mining is seeing all these little models. I love seeing weapons and armor and mounts and stuff like that. But when I saw the Magar, and if the Blizzard artist who made the Magar Orc Totem is listening, keep listening to this, because I'm not upset. I am so happy when I saw those totems. The fact that someone said, what if we took the Cup of Unity, the cup that Gul'dan offers people, and what if we made that into a totem? What if we added this metal insignia of the Horde onto the front of it, and we gave it as their totem? And it suddenly started creating all these like different head canons in my idea. Like, you know, we know that Gul'dan was rejected by the elements. So what if he took the totem of his former master that we see in the Harbingers episode that he takes his staff and he kills? What if he takes his totem and he uses that as the cup to try and bribe Grommash and others? Like, it's so Gul'dan, and it's so thematically fitting that, you know, not only does he steal the shaman of his nameless clan's staff, he's like, you know what, I'm going to take the totem. The elements rejected me. Screw you. I'm going to fill this totem with the blood of demons. And it's just, I look at it every time and I'm like, that is the coolest totem ever. And it's just a cup. I linked it to people who are like, oh, it's a cup. And I'm like, but don't you see? It's not a cup. It's important. This is Gul'dan's cup. And it's so cool. And the fact that I'm excited over a cup totem, man, I would have thought, okay, how can they make an Magar Orc totem be different than a regular Orc totem? And seeing that makes me go, holy crap, that's it.
It was the only way that would, like, it's, you know, because not a lot of people catch that, like, to be completely honest.
No.
You know, they're not, it's subtle. It's a cup. You know, it's not like the Tauren totems with the horns, and it's not like the goblin shamans that are all you know, it's just kind of a cup. And it's done so well. Like, for them to pull that in from, you know, like you said, the Gul'dan perspective, it was really well done. Like, yeah, whoever created that, they need a raise.
They do, 100%. Awesome job. That's like the coolest part of the Magar is the name of this podcast is going to be called Cups in Caps.
Cups.
Talking about obviously warriors, hunters, rogues. None of that's surprising. Their racial mount is a wolf, a different kind of wolf. Warlords was full of wolf and boar and hippo reskin, so I'm glad that we got a different kind of looking wolf. That was good of Blizzard to do that. The tabard was a little bit awkward when it was data mined because the lower flap had the insignia of the Horde on it, and people were like, why would Blizzard do that when the heritage armor belt is this massive skull belt? That's going to cover that. And if you put the tabard on an orc in heritage armor, the tabard part hangs lower than the belt and the insignia is at the very bottom of the belt, so you see all of it. None of it's covered. It was very specifically designed with the heritage armor obviously in mind, but at first glance people kind of got angry, so I thought that was kind of neat.
Yeah.
The heritage armor, what's really cool is it was first data mined as the regular set, and then a bluish silver version and a black version was data mined, and the same thing was data mined for Lightforged, and we only got one armor color, so people were like, oh great, we're not going to get these. Apparently it was confirmed, where did I see this? I can't remember where I saw it, but basically 3 different armor sets, the Warsong themed default set, Frostwolf set, and Blackrock set. Apparently they're all going to be available for Magar Orc players to actually get in game when these races go live. So that's cool. This is the first multicolored heritage armor that we've seen, and I hope that it opens the doors for other colors for other races. Their racials are interesting. Have you seen the Ancestral Call racial? Have you seen like the specific buffs for them?
I haven't. No.
Okay, I haven't seen them either, but I saw a picture of one, and you pop it in to get a buff, and depending on your class, it gives you the buff of a certain class. It'll say Blessing of the Thunderlord, and it'll give you agility or something related to the Thunderlord clan, or if you're a mage or a priest, Blessing of the Shadow Moon, and increases your spell crit or something like that.
Yeah.
And I don't think there's a visual to go with it, but I was hoping a list of the actual buff names would be data mined, because that would have been cool. So that's kind of custom and unique.
That's neat, yeah.
Open Skies. Before Blizzard put out this preview, it was just increased mount speed, which I thought, man, that's overpowered. But now on their official page, it says increased flight speed, which is kind of funny considering
we won't be able to fly.
Well, that, and also considering the whole Draenor flying fiasco. And it's kind of funny, a little tongue-in-cheek way of Blizzard saying, oh yeah, the Magyar can fly easily, because they had so many years to grind it out, because it's been 2 years since Warlords. Sympathetic Vigor, increased health for pets. I'm surprised at a racial that affects only one class.
Yeah, exactly. But I like that they put that in, because it's weird though, like, because of the ancestral call thing, and then the sympathetic vigor, our hunter is just gonna be so OP. Like,
yeah,
you know. But I like the specificity of that racial, because
does it apply to shamans and their elementals?
Exactly.
Does it apply to mage? Do mages still have? Do they still have frost elemental? I don't even know. I don't play mage.
I think they can. I think it has a talent. Yeah, it's like a lone wolf talent. It, but yeah, they still have it. So I wonder if it is just hunter. I'm gonna have to check that out. We'll have
to investigate. And of course, Savage Blood, poisons, diseases, and curses affect Magyar orcs for a shorter duration. That's kind of neat. That's a little bit overpowered. So that's, Death Knights, rip Death Knights, attacking Magyar orcs. Tough question. Magyar orcs or Dark Irons? What are you more excited for?
Dark Irons. Yeah. I think they're going to be the race that makes me play more Alliance. Like, when Lightforged came out, I was like, hell yeah, these are so cool. Like, I love Draenei, but I've just never really gotten into the Alliance side of things. Now, I feel like I have to. And I think I'm just, Dark Irons are the way to go. Like,
just for the sake of balance, I'm gonna say Magyar. I love the Dark Irons, but I've been an advocate for orc clans being represented in game for a long time, since before Warlords. So it's hard for me to choose. Dark Irons I was least excited for, and they're the ones I'm most excited for Battle for Azeroth. But Magyar orcs, when they announced that accidentally on stream,
right?
I was on top of the world. That was amazing. So I'm excited for both. We're going to end this with just some brief speculation on the next two allied races, Tirasians and Zandalari. By the way, anyone who knows me, especially in the Discord, the original way of addressing a human from Cult Tiras was Tirasian, as stated by Sean Copeland, senior historian of Blizzard Entertainment. Years ago, that was years ago, they decided, and the WoW team decided to go for Kultiran, which makes sense, but to me, it's the most simple way. What do you call a human from Cult Tiras? A Kultiran. It sounds so simple. Like, it's almost, and this is going to upset some people, but it's almost like what, the lowborn of Cult Tiras would say, I'm a Kultiran. Yes, you are. Yes, you are. And the nobleborns are called Tirasians. And Tirasian just sounds more...
It sounds better.
Exotic.
It really opens up the... Yeah, I don't like
Kultiran is simple. And people say, Tirasian doesn't have the word cull. Fine, if you need cull because you need such a simplicity of words, call it Kultirasian. Because Dallaranian, Gilnean, Tirasian, it's not a big deal. There's some things like Stormwindian sounds awful. That's canon. Yeah. That's awful. Alteraci, that sounds cool. Stromic, that sounds cool. Tirasian always just sounded a little... And the fact that they dropped cull, it fits. Yeah. But Kultiran is officially the canon way of saying it. Tirasian's not wrong. It's just the old way of saying it. So for Latest who's listening from the Discord, I've never said Kultiran is wrong. It's the new way of saying it. Tirasian isn't wrong. It is the old way of saying it. So
I'm stuck in my ways.
I'm not moving my answer. Tirasians.
Kids these days.
Damn kids, back in my day we called them Tirasians. Jesus. All right. So Tirasian speculation. Druids, we know, is a thing. That was pretty big and
Yes.
revealing.
Oh my gosh.
What are your thoughts on the Druid forms that you've seen so far?
Oh my god, I love it. Like the fact that they've taken the models like from their environment, like that corrupted, like wooden, it is so amazing. And like I didn't expect them to be druids at all. And then coming out with the models, I was like, wow, this is a game changer.
It's almost as if Blizzard, like, it's a last second decision and someone went to the table and said, okay, Horde is getting a lot of cool druids. What about Alliance? And someone says, what, are they going to make Kulturans a druid? And someone says, why not?
Actually.
And they go, oh, okay. And then someone from the Hearthstone, Dave Kozak pokes his head in from the Hearthstone team and goes, Harvest Witches, hello, Hearthstone expansion just came out. And everyone's like, this makes so much more sense.
Well, when I first, I heard about the druids before I saw the models. And I was like, that's dumb. Like, how is that gonna work? Like, and then as soon as I saw the models, it opened it up for me. It made sense. They've been living in this wooded, corrupted, their nature is no longer the nature that, we kind of stick druids with.
It's not our druidic magic. It's their own.
And so that made me like accept it. Like that, I just saw it and I was like, okay, first of all, amazing model. Second of all, this makes sense. And I love the fact that humans can be druids.
It goes back to, specifically since Kulturans, Tirasians, whatever you want to call them, they're descendants of Gilneans, and Gilneans had the Harvest Witches. So they developed their own off branch of harvest magic. And that's wicked. That's just so cool. It's not our druid magic. It's not Malfurion, Emerald Dream, neat little green trees. It's this corrupted.
I want to see so desperately the spell animations.
Yes.
Because I don't want, if they're green, I'm going to be so mad. Like,
they need to be a little bit of a color.
Corrupted. Like you've seen a lot of like blues. Like. Mm-hmm. I want it to be that.
That'd be dope.
Because you can't put the same druid animations on the Tirasians. It's not going to work. So that I really, really want to see those.
And on that specific with this, like the human being druids, Tirasian shaman, do you think, considering our topics we've discussed with But Wait There's Lore and human shamans, do you think that it's possible?
I think it's possible.
I think that would be cool. I think it would.
Are they? I don't know if they're going to do it. Like,
How cool would that be to introduce a human allied race that can't be paladins, but shamans instead?
Shamans. Exactly.
That's so conflicting for like my vanilla player. I'm like, what is that? That is weird.
Human shaman, I can't do this. Because of the conversations, especially that we had on But Wait There's Lore, because we were all on board with like, nah, humans, shamans, no, don't be silly. And then we got told, we did. Because the humans used to have those, primal, like magical ways, and we completely didn't even think about it, So I think if anything's going to be a shaman, any human race, it would have to be Tirasian. You can't take the normal, when I say normal, you can't take the humans of Azeroth, the one we currently know, and have them be shamans. It doesn't work. But Tirasians, it could, because of their ancestry. So I want to see them release their classes, definitely. But I think shaman's definitely a possibility.
We haven't got the there's been no data mined Tirasian totems. The second those totems are data mined, it's confirmed.
Yep.
But there's no official class list for Tirasians. There was a Zandalari data mine one. We'll talk about that in a second. But again, not official by Blizzard. I'd love to see for the Tirasians the body type selection. We've seen the chunky, the thick with 4 Cs Tirasians. We've seen the thin ones. is it weird for me to want the middle option, the regular human? And the reason I say that is most of the humans in Kul Tiras, including Jaina and her mother, use the regular human model.
Yeah.
And I would love if they can choose the regular human model, but different hairstyles. I don't see it happening, but do you think that the thin human versus the thicker human, do you think we'll see that? Or is it just going to be the thick ones? What do you think?
I want to, like, I think it'll be both. I don't think they'll make it just the thick with 3 C's. I don't think they will. Because we've seen, like, as you, not spoilery, but kind of spoilery, as you kind of walk around, they're not all thick.
No.
There is, like, a difference in the models. And I think if you're gonna submerge yourself and you're going to, you know, be a Tirasian, you're gonna be able to choose what body type you have. And
at the Battle for Azeroth press conference a few weeks ago, there was mention of these different body types, and I don't know if it was just for the NPC Tirasians or not, but they brought it up again, so I'm really hoping that that's kind of a different selection, and different allied races bring in different things to the board. Some have extra armor, some have really crazy different models like the Zandalari, some are just big humans, but they've got 3 different models for those big humans. And I'd love to see that as well. Racial mount. Wow, what the hell would the racial mount be?
No idea.
Boats.
I've been trying to think about that. Yeah, just a boat.
That's it.
Like, I've been trying to think about it, and I just can't think. I want to go naval, right? I want to think of, but it doesn't work on land. You know what I mean? So then I was like sitting trying to look at the environment, like, okay, what could work? And I just can't come up with.
There's a lot of new horses, but we got a horse one specifically in the Collector's Edition. With Zandalari,
yeah,
we know that their allied racial mount is just another Triceratops. Unfortunately, nothing crazy. It's actually just a reskin of the other Triceratops. Again, it's not confirmed, not canonized. Blizzard hasn't posted in a picture, but it was data mined as that. So, would they do the same thing? Because they're giving unique custom body models, they would just give another horse?
But there were those, like, weren't there, like, the buff horses? Like, the terrifying, like...
Those buff horses are actually all the new horse models.
Oh.
Yeah, so all the horses are being reskinned, because horses have horribly outdated models.
Yeah, they're horrible. Because when the... Was it the Collector's Edition mounts came out? I imagined that horse being the Tirasian class mount or racial mount.
Yeah, that would have been perfect.
But I just don't I don't understand why it was given to everybody. Like, I understand, but that would be perfect. So I don't know. I think it will be a horse. I just don't know how it's going to be different. A Tirasian horse, you know? I'm excited to see what they come up with. That's not the Collector's Edition mount. Yeah. Moving on to the Zandalari, class speculation. The biggest question at BlizzCon, they said in an interview that they thought Alliance getting Paladins only and Horde getting Shamans only was a nice throwback to vanilla. But that was thrown out the window with Dark Irons and Shamans, which means Horde has a potential for Paladins. I am literally the most salty person on the earth right now. No High Mountain Paladins for you, Shanyn. I lost it. Like, High Mountain Paladins, they made sense to me. I mean, if there's a Pandaren monk in Thunder Totem that can teach them how to be monks, then why is what's-her-name, a pony Brightmane from Mulgore, not there? High Mountain, yeah. Why is she not talking with Mela and getting these Horde in there? And then, they come out with the Zandalari class list, and I'm like, looking through the icons, I don't see the Paladin icon. I need another Paladin class in my life. I love Taurens. Taurens are my race. Everything a Tauren can be, it's Tauren. And so when Paladins came out for Taurens, I was like like I love paladins. I want Zandalari paladins so desperately, and it, like, in my mind it works. I want it to happen. Like we saw in Throne of Thunder, you know, we had those troll paladin NPCs, the prelates. And so as soon as Zandalari got announced, I was like, oh, Throne of Thunder, Zandalari, they have prelates in there. I'm sure they have that in Zandalar, and they have this whole thing. Sure, they're going to be able to be paladins. But now, I'm not so sure.
I'm going to stir the pot a little bit with some... I'm going to be very vague with spoilers here, so if you don't want to be spoiled, I'm going to try my best. I'm going to give very minor spoilers, and then I'm going to be vague and on the actual big spoilers. So, there are Zandalari paladins in the Zandalari capital, and the racial leader of the class leader of those, you talk to her and she says, no, we are not recruiting, we are a very small group of paladins, or warriors who wield the light through a particular Loa, and no, we're not recruiting. You're like, okay, well, that's just Blizzard's way of not giving us Zandalari paladins.
Sure.
That particular Loa bestows a primal form of light upon them, and they are paladins in their own elements, in the same way that Sunwalkers aren't paladins, but class-wise they are. Sunwalkers are their own class, but game mechanics, they have to be paladins.
They're paladins.
People, I know, I have one friend in particular who hates the fact that Taurens can be paladins, and I'm like, don't look at it like that. Don't look at them as Tauren Uthers. Look at them as their own thing, as these primal native warriors fighting with the power of the sun. But for the sake of game mechanics, they're paladins. Same thing for Zandalari. A couple weeks ago, in not the last Q&A that just happened, but the previous Q&A, someone asked Ian on the stream, what about Zandalari paladins? And he spoiled a little bit, and he warned, a little bit of a spoiler. Something happens to this particular Loa, and the Zandalari suddenly lose their faith. They lose their magic, and the Zandalari paladin leader says, most of us, not all of us, have lost our powers, and we're skeptical about those who haven't lost their powers. And he could have left it there. He could have said, that's it. No Zandalari paladins, shut up. Mm-hmm. But then he said, but could they get their powers from somewhere else? Could the Zandalari have another Loa? Have another form to go and get their powers from? Is there another answer? He didn't have to say that. There's nothing that suggested, but he said it.
He's so good at doing that. He's so, like, I hate him, and I love him at the same time, because I'm like, you could drop it. You could drop the entire conversation right there, but there's always that what if.
He did with High Elves the other day. He said, High Elves are Blood Elves. If you want to play a High Elf, go play a Blood Elf. The lore community exploded. It is still this residual explosion from that comment. High Elves gone. Now, of course, they could surprise everyone later on in the expansion by announcing High Elves, but right now they are a smoldering crater that's not coming to life anytime soon.
He left that creeping thought for Zandalari paladins.
He did, which makes me go, oh. Mm-hmm. And exactly. Blizzard, November 2017, no paladins. But now that Dark Irons can be shamans, what if they're going, you know what? We gave Tirasian the druid option. What if we gave Horde a paladin option? And it's not the craziest thought. So I'm hoping that it happens. I'm hoping it'd be so cool to see that go for. Well, I don't want to get into any more spoilers. We'll have to wait until it's officially confirmed or not confirmed. This has been a really long podcast. So Shanyn, closing thoughts. What are you most excited for Battle for Azeroth?
I'm super excited for Sylvanas' storyline. Like, to be just quick and easy about it. You know, we saw kind of this Retribution arc start when she became war chief. You know, she's like, okay, who's gonna help me avenge everything? And then we started seeing a turn, and I don't know how far that turn is going. I had talked about it a while back, you know, when she was trying to force the Valkyr in
Stormheim.
Oh my god, Stormheim. We kind of saw that darker turn. Like, what are you doing? So I want to see her storyline progress more than any other character right now. I know what I think is going to happen, but
we'll definitely do it. We'll have to meet up again for another podcast and just talk all about that. Guys, this has gone on for quite a long time, and this is just two. Originally, this was supposed to be all 4 allied races. We were supposed to go into explicit detail about the Tirasians' history and the Zandalari, but I realized after writing so much about the Dark Iron, holy crap, this is only going to be two. Too exciting. So we'll come back once we know a little bit more about the Tirasians, maybe after release, so we don't spoil anything. Thank you all for listening to this long podcast. I apologize for it being so long. Again, feedback on the layout of, certain topics. I'd love to introduce the topics of brief history of the topic, the in-game representation, whether it's the models or whatever, and then talking about some key important characters. We didn't get a chance to talk about key important characters with the Magyar because we talked so long about that certain cinematic. Don't forget to check us out on Twitch at twitch.tv/Lost Codex Lore. Link in the description. You can also find links to our Patreon, where you can help support what we do. Again, none of our videos will be mandatory, given only to Patreon subscribers. Just a little bonus things like behind the scenes, scripts, birthday cards, stuff like that. You can find us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and of course, youtube.com/The Lost Codex. Shanyn, tell these people where they can find you.
You guys can find me. I'm on Twitch, Twitter, and Instagram on Snazzy Shanyn. And also, if any of you are interested, you can always come join us in Blizznerds. Throw an awesome party at BlizzCon. Great community to be a part of. You just ask to join and you are in. So it's a great community to be a part of.
If you're going to BlizzCon 2018, get excited because there is lots of stuff to come with the Blizznerds party. Won't spoil anything yet, but there are some exciting things to come that's new this year, so we'll have Shanyn back to talk about BlizzNerds. BlizzCon 2018 party, closer to, holy crap, it's almost May, which means it's practically almost November. BlizzCon is almost here. Thank you, Shanyn, for joining us on the Decoded podcast. I hope you'll come back.
I will come back.
All right. Perfect. Thank you guys for listening, and of course, we'll see you guys in the next episode.